And we're back here in Inside the Ropes, and I'm very, very pleased to have two authors who are just ingrained in wrestling fans' minds now. They just keep writing these books. It is The Eighth Wonder of the World, The True Story of Andre the Giant by Pat LaPrade and my good friend Bertrand Hebert. We're back together again. How are you guys?
I'm good. Good to see you. Everything is going back slowly to normal for you guys.
Yeah, the UK is just recovering from Pat Patterson in 2018, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Just getting back to normal.
It was the Pat 19.
The Pat, well,
Pat 18 instead of COVID-19.
Yeah, Pat 18. Honestly, I never thought I would end up in a gay bar in Manchester with Pat Patterson, but there you go. That's where life takes you. You just...
None of us would.
One of the other things, and I might just be adding a narrative to this that isn't there, but when you guys talk about, him doing The Princess Bride and the idea that had been in development for like over a decade or about a decade when they finally did it, and he had that role, I mean, do you think he kind of knew, this role will sort of iconify me, like this is something that, because him wrestling, in the 50s and 60s or 60s and 70s in Japan, the UK, that's not on tape, whereas if he does this movie, The Princess Bride, that's going to be there forever. Like, do you think that was in his mind from the conversations you had, and how important was him doing that movie to sort of his legacy?
I mean, it's very important to his legacy because that goes beyond wrestling. I have people at work who knew The Princess Bride and knew the character and knew that actor in the movie, but they didn't know he was a wrestler. That's going to be there forever. It's going to move on. It's on Disney Plus right now, and everybody can see that. But I don't think he realized how much of an impact it would have on his legacy, because what I think he found in it is that maybe there's something else I can do besides wrestling. And there was a push for that afterwards, and a few tries and attempts, and even a movie that was released after he passed away. Although physically, since the acromegaly was taking such a toll on him, except for the look, he was losing all other attributes that would help him get those special role on the television. But they just take the big show today. I mean, back then there was a lot less options. It's not impossible to think that if it would have happened today, he could have retired early and become an actor. And when he was not in pain, and there was so much more he could do in the way he plays a role, and he dived so much into that role. I mean, learning his lines perfectly and all that, which the producers and director were not sure he was going to pull. He really loved the experience, and a lot of wrestlers can testify that they had to watch The Princess Bride on quite numerous occasions on the bus in Japan or in his hotel. Sometimes lunch came with that, but still,
he was very proud of it.
Over and over again, even at LRB. I mean, when he had visit, I mean, he would play the movie for everyone all the time, apparently. So it made an impact on him, but I don't think he could ever imagine that it would be available on the click stream today at any point for anyone having Disney Plus. So I think that's a really cool thing, though, that he can be remembered for more than what he did in the ring.
I do believe that if the movie would have came in his career 10 years before, Andre's career would have been totally different, because he enjoyed himself so much on that set. When he was wrestling, a locker room was like a sanctuary for him. He really, really enjoyed being with the boys, playing cards, even more than traveling, or at this point of his life in the mid 80s, probably more than going there and having a match. He really enjoyed being there just with the boys and playing cards and making pranks and all that. So he found that atmosphere, that same feeling when he was on Princess Bride set. And I think that if that movie would have came out 10 years before, more producers would have realized that he really had a real talent for acting. He would have been in better shape and better physical shape to do more of that kind of those kind of movies. And you never know. Maybe his wrestling career would have been put aside and would have become that mainstream actor, pretty much like Dwayne Johnson is right now. Maybe not as much. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little. But all I'm saying is that maybe his wrestling career, he would have not had to wrestle that long, because he would have found that same feeling he had in a wrestling locker room on a movie set. And that's just a tragedy that, this movie happened so late in his life, when, he couldn't even grab Robin Wright, dropping from, from a few feet, because his arm weren't strong enough by that time. So that's really a tragedy that this movie came so late in his life, but he was really, really proud of it.
And you can even tell when you watch the movie, like, you guys detail a lot of the stuff that he couldn't do and what they had to kind of do to have somebody fall on him without any weight. And you would never know watching the movie. And he does the role so well. But like you say, maybe if it had been 10 years before, it would have worked out better for him. You guys detail this. It's in the introduction to the book. It's a major chapter. But let's talk about the real story of WrestleMania 3 and the match with Hogan and Andre, because it's still today the body slam with Hogan and Andre. If you only started watching wrestling 5 years ago, you know that body slam. It's iconic. And one of the parts of the book that I thought was really interesting was you guys talked about David Letterman wanted Andre on his show the night that Hogan won the belt from the Iron Sheik. So, in terms of the match with Hogan, how important was that for Andre? Do you think he saw this was the big hurrah, the kind of final peak for him?
Well, I don't think any wrestler really believe it's the big hurrah or the last tour, as they say. They always think that they have more, and until the end, Andre always believed that he had more, I think. Although he knew how important it was, and he knew that Hogan was going to be the new so-and-so Andre, or the new star. That's pretty clear, because his body couldn't keep up at that point. Although at WrestleMania 3, it's a very interesting concept, because the famous surgery for his back that we've heard so much about would actually happen after WrestleMania and not before. And that surgery brought that concept that maybe WrestleMania 3 would be his last match. So in that sense, he knew how important that would be for him and his legacy. And when we had talked to Carpentier for the first book, he had mentioned that he had asked Andre about it, and that Andre saw that by interlocking his legacy with Hulk Hogan's legacy at WrestleMania 3, it would carry on his own legacy forever. And that's pretty much what happened. The Hogan legacy or story is tied to that moment in time. WWE has even put that moment in time basically as the centerpiece of everything. It opens every show and will continue to open every show, I believe. And more, it will always be there somehow. And every year, except for this year, obviously, but they're going to have the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. So that's always going to bring back the Andre's name. And he's clearly been put in that mytho of WWE as the centerpiece with Hulk. So I think in that sense, it is a pinnacle of the former star passing on the torch to the new star.
What is also very important to understand, and that's the point we're making in the book, is that Andre's career didn't end with WrestleMania 3. It actually started something else. It started the whole foundation of WWE pay-per-views, because when you look at the storyline with Hogan, not only you have WrestleMania 3, then he has his back surgery. He comes back for Survivor Series in 1987, the very first Survivor Series that is built around Team Hogan against Team Andre. Then you have the February 5th, 1988 main event show that drew 33 million people, the most ever wrestling show, the most watched show ever in the US. And before that, you have Royal Rumble 1988, which was based upon the contract signing of that February match between Hogan and Andre. And then you have WrestleMania 4 that, you know, the only match you really wanted to see in the tournament was Hogan and Andre, because you didn't even know who was going to make it to the main event, to the final of the tournament. And then you have the very first SummerSlam at the end in August of 1988, which is the Mega Bucks against the Mega Powers, Andre and DiBiase against Hogan and Savage. So you have the Big Four, what we usually call the Big Four, were based on that rivalry, on that feud between Hogan and Andre. And that's something that people never talk about. But when you look at the numbers, that's when Andre made the most money. That feud was really built the foundation of all the pay-per-views WWE is still doing to this day. Because that Big Four was, for the longest time, the only four WWE would have, and they would make much more on pay-per-views than the NWA or WCW would do at the same time. And Hogan and Andre were really important for that. So his career didn't end with WrestleMania 3. Something else started that day, and it was very important for us to talk about that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you say, I mean, because when I was growing up, I was watching, those were my first kind of pay-per-views. I would watch in VHS, the WrestleMania 3, the SummerSlam 88, WrestleMania 4, Survivor Series. But, I mean, what's weird when you read the story is that WrestleMania 3, you mentioned in there, the two Piper's Pits basically sell WrestleMania. And, you know, WrestleMania 3 is one of the three highest gates that WWE have ever done. But I've got to think that, like, when WWE sold WrestleMania 32 in Dallas, they really just sold that on the brand of WWE, whereas they really got, you know, 93,173. I don't want to get the number wrong. Got to keep to the narrative. But I mean, it felt like from reading the book, you know, they really built that on Hogan and Andre. And, you know, you guys talk about how he had just come back from Princess Bride, where he was really injured. So it's even more impressive when you really look at the detail as to how they made that main event work and sold that show.
I'll never be able to watch that match the same way again, knowing that Andre got the surgery after the match and not before. Mm-hmm. So it's even more impressive. And you can see in the match that there's some subtle ways that Andre was doing things to protect his back and to help him being able to finish it. So it's even more impressive. But it was the perfect storyline, right? It was two friends, one who decided to turn against the other because the other one was having all the spotlight, and Andre knew how to be a heel from Japan. People didn't know that here at the time, but Andre was always a heel in Japan, so he knew what to do and how to do it. So that was nothing new for him. He already had 17 years of experience, you know, being a heel. So that chemistry between him and Hogan was just magic, and people just bought into it.